Divas, Romalen. Hello, everyone. What an amazing celebration of the 20th anniversary of the Roma Access program. Congratulations and heartfelt gratitude to all the alumni for your contributions throughout the years, and a big thank you to the CEU Romani Studies program team. I'm deeply honored to deliver closing remarks for a conference packed with engaging, intense, and above all, necessary research and dialogues about Roma youth, access programs, and higher education more broadly. But it feels like an impossible mission to capture the depth and richness that scholars, activists, and practitioners have brought to this conference. Your contribution covered a vast collection of interconnected issues, including neoliberalism and meritocratic norms, exclusion in egalitarian schools, individual rights and collective injustices, individual responsibility versus structural determinants of success, systemic and structural inequities, inequality and dominance, wideness, substantive equality, equality of opportunity, and equality of results, the politics of recognition and restitution, the emotional imprint or emotional cost of one's social background, self-positioning, loss of knowledge as an act of dispossession, epistemic activism, epistemic violence, epistemic power, and the tension between being shaped and actively shaping and producing social relations and power, social relations of power and inequality. You have examined access programs and higher education in Bulgaria, the Czech Republic, Hungary, North Macedonia, Poland, Germany, Spain, and the UK, and have also discussed the experiences of Roma, Sinti, Sintese, and Romnia, Gypsy travelers, and Gitanos. Obviously, I cannot cover all of that in my concluding remarks, and I won't waste your time summarizing papers. But I want to briefly delve into three major themes that have been prominent throughout the conference, namely the CEU Roma Access Program, liberal anti-racism and the structural determinants of Roma education, and peripheries or margins. And I'll begin with the Roma Access Program and the broader concept of the university as both a tool and a space for Roma justice, as well as a locus for primarily market-friendly knowledge, as thoroughly unpacked by Judith Veres in her paper. And Judith, I hope I pronounced your last name correctly. Over the past 2 decades, CU has become a pipeline for over 400 Roma individuals, facilitating their transition from bachelor's degrees in their countries to grad education in Europe or the United States. Notably, and I mentioned this yesterday, 8 in 10 RGBP graduates have secured acceptance into grad programs. So we could argue that neoliberals have already received sufficient incentives to invest in the program when considering cost, productivity, returns, and economic values. Economic value, but putting aside the necessary sarcasm regarding Western and neoliberal gajo thought, is crucial to highlight that many alumni actively engage in critical Romani studies, as well as activism, journalism, policy making, and politics. Importantly, CU RAP alumni have recognized the urgency of transcending the gajo gaze and have taken charge of defining and redefining our Roma culture, identities, and history through our own lenses. Some CEU RAP alumni and faculty have been involved in a contemporary Roma cultural revolution, which partially transpires in the work of Rome Archive or ERIAC. This emerging Roma equivalent of the 20th century negritude movement, which celebrates this time around Roma culture, constitutes a significant development. However, it represents only one piece in an ocean of necessary structural changes and transformation in our society and in our gradual uprising against and opposition to anti-Roma racism. So once again, kudos to all the alumni and thank you for all you do. It's now time for donors to ensure continuity, stability, and enhancement of the CU Roma programs and research. Yesterday, Violeta Zentai emphasized that institutions and structures, including universities, can serve as drivers of social change. However, as she underlined, they also reproduce social and human hierarchies deeply seated in systems of oppression. And I will leverage her argument to introduce the second topic of my remarks, which revolves around the tie between structural determinants of Roma education and liberal anti-racism. This idea has been particularly influenced by Milena's examination of exclusion and power structures in egalitarian schools in Finland, as well as Judith's argument regarding the tension between the idea of individual responsibility versus the structural determinants of attainment in education. We know that Gypsy lawyerists have traditionally scrutinized Roma education through the lenses of cultural determinants, whereas much of Romani studies has delved into the social determinants of education. Yet Justina and Simona, along with Juliana and many of you there in the room, have encouraged us to shift our attention towards the structural determinants of education and the structural determinants of educational attainment. And indeed, as I underscored yesterday, the liberal focus on individualism and individual rights has long neglected the collective and transgenerational nature of many inequities and injustices impacting Roma education. More so in many countries, including Bulgaria, for example, as Martina and Ogi underlined yesterday, and I quote, ethnocentrism is an established phenomenon in the Bulgarian education system. Besides, during the roundtable on the pedagogy of access to education today, the tutors and some participants emphasized issues related to a broad colonial Western gajo pedagogy, but also language injustices at all levels of education. And they also talked about the politics of and the hierarchy between the so-called Gajo rationality and Roma subjectivity. Yet we know that knowledge is political, including Gajo knowledge about Roma, which often is also biased. Who has an interest in keeping the system of oppression in place? Not Roma for sure. But that's a long conversation. Getting back to the roundtable, the tutors also discussed emotions, learning, and knowledge production, highlighting how the students' lived experience of anti-Roma racism, coupled with a deep sense of responsibility to their family and community, leads to both pain and a calling, a vocation, and a moral commitment to true justice, if we are to use the words of Professor Cornel West. That in the absence of Roma, including Roma staff, stories, images, and history from pedagogy, curricula, and school spaces, as well as the distortion of our history and culture, this absence stands as one of the many invisible or scantily addressed dimensions of anti-Roma racism. In fact, it is invisible mostly to the Gage, as Roma, including Roma children and youth, see and feel the erasure, injustices, and the power of intracoloniality. Moreover, liberal anti-racism, which is pervasive in Europe, has long assumed that racist beliefs drive individuals within institutions to enact racist policies, and has addressed racism or other or more so discrimination, mostly from that narrow perspective. However, as structuralists C.L.R. James and Fanon underscored, racism is structural, and beliefs are emotional or intellectual unfoldings of oppression. Therefore, anti-racism should translate into radical collective action to transform societies rather than just liberal education to transform beliefs. At the same time, as the research of some panelists presenting at this conference has shown, pledges to positive action, affirmative action programs, quota systems, and access programs are effective. Yet they too could be strengthened by coupling them with more structural interventions aimed at breaking oppression, power imbalances, and human hierarchies. Therefore, within this framework, a new theory, and more importantly, a new praxis of justice would entail both recognition and redistribution, as emphasized by Jethro, drawing from the contributions of Taylor and Fraser. Moreover, it would also require intentional decolonial and anti-racism theories, laws, practices, cultures, epistemes, processes, and practices addressing structural dimensions, continuities, and legacies of anti-Roma racism, racial capitalism or neo-feudalism, and intracoloniality across Europe. Lastly, please allow me to briefly touch upon the concept of peripheries or margins, a topic that Angela and Prem thoroughly discussed yesterday. Peripheries only exist in relation to or because centers exist. Therefore, when analyzing the Roma experience as a periphery, who is considered the core, the power, the hegemony? And I would say that for generations, the Roma people have grappled with a double jeopardy of oppression and human hierarchies stemming from both within countries and between countries, thus spanning from the divide between the West and East and national and local power mechanisms. Within the realm of scholarship, we know there is a long European tension between superpowers and peripheries, which constantly centers or create differential power and force each gajo regime of truth, in Foucault's words, to have a particular level of power and influence or not. Yet the gajo-led canonical authority over the Roma realities is reflected both in the enduring Western hegemony and the Eastern peripheries. Still, as Angela beautifully put it yesterday, from the margins, Roma voices and our allies have managed to bring change, oppose the gajo gaze in the scholarship and beyond, oppose patriarchy and heteronormativity, and think and imagine the world in more just, daring, and creative ways. Finally, as Prem invited us, I hope we continue to demand the world to co-center our realities and work in solidarity with others, particularly historically oppressed, marginalized, and discriminated against groups and communities in national, regional, and global matters. Thank you all very much. We are proud of and grateful to the RAP and RGPP tutors, faculty, alumni, administrators, leaders, and current students. Thank you, Angela and Martin, and your entire team for your work and for offering us a platform, a space, a community to share ideas and continuously shape and reshape critical Romani studies.